Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun Bun, and this is our Sweetpea Season 1, Episode 5 reaction and review. Here we are, just one episode away from this show being done,
Yeah.
or at least done for now. Nobody knows exactly what the future holds. I mean, it's also very hard to know what Rhiannon's future holds after this particular episode because we are really kind of gearing up for the point of no return with this character.
Yeah, there's only one episode left. And while this series is based on books, which we haven't read,
Yeah.
so if you've got book spoilers, we don't want to hear them.
Yeah.
This show obviously could come back for more. There's more material, but as of this recording, we don't it hasn't been said that it's going to be coming back just yet, but it feels hopeful that it could. I mean, it has a huge star in it.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting concept, but this episode definitely everybody had to really put on their suspension of disbelief hats for this episode. And I mean, you kind of have to in general with
Yeah.
this show, but there was some stuff in this episode that I was like, I don't know if I believe this anymore.
Well, it's interesting because we have both been really, really high on this show
Yeah, it's
for the
good.
entirety of the season so far. It's been one of the most pleasant surprises for me of the year. I say that knowing it is very, very dark and about murder a lot of the time, but
Yeah.
it's still been really, really engrossing. I mean, this was easily the messiest episode that we've seen. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying messy in the sense of what Rhiannon has done to some of the people this season, but in terms of asking us to kind of fully buy in and explaining what the motivations are for certain characters. Because to me anyway, it's easier to buy into Rhiannon being sort of this unbelievable figure sometimes just because she's clearly unhinged. She's been through a lot of trauma. And I think because of that, she doesn't think like a normal person would think.
Mhm.
But with this episode, you're kind of being asked to do that a lot more with other people. And that's where it gets a little bit trickier if you're to believe that other people are kind of avatars of how people would actually act in the real world.
Okay, but before we get too much further into this review, be sure to hit that subscribe button.
Yeah.
We are going to be here for the rest of this season of Sweet Pea. We are also covering From. If
Mhm.
you're looking for other horror related type TV shows, we have Silo coming up in just a few weeks, and Dexter Original Sin's going to be coming up in December, and we will be covering that here too, along with Squid Game season 2. So make sure
Yeah.
you hit that subscribe button and stick with us.
And if you guys do want to support us further, be sure to join our Patreon. We have exclusive video coverage
Mhm.
of the Penguin happening there right now as we get near the end of that season. And in addition to that, we're also going to have exclusive video coverage coming up of Landman, which
Yep.
is coming to Paramount Plus. It's a new Taylor Sheridan show,
Mhm.
as well as Dune Prophecy, which is very, very much highly anticipated, the prequel to the Dune movies. So join our Patreon. We have a link in the description.
Mhm.
And thank you so much to
Thank you.
everyone who has.
Okay, one thing that I really liked about this episode was that she finally put herself on her own kill list where she
Yeah.
was just like, and myself for, becoming this journalist and putting this article out that now has the whole community coming together to get behind finding Julia, who I have tied up in my garage. Like, she's at least having a little bit of self-awareness, which is something that this character just really doesn't have for herself at all. So to see a little bit of that where she's kind of like, okay, maybe I pushed it a little bit too far and maybe I shouldn't have written that article because now it's gotten quite out of control.
Well, it's good that she's starting to have a little bit of an out of body experience here because she has been one person for the entirety of her life. And I know because this has been a 6 episode show, they've kind of had to rush her transformation at times,
Mhm.
but it has happened so quickly that she would be unrecognizable to the Rhiannon we saw back in the pilot in a lot of ways. And I think it's important that she can kind of identify that while there may be things about her new, quote unquote, empowered version of herself that she likes, she may also loathe the number of things that she's doing, or at least be able to recognize that they are problems. I don't know if she's
Yeah.
ever going to fully be able to recognize the gravity of what she's doing, or that some of these people she's taken out really were not necessarily horrible people all across the board. They may have just done some horrible things at times. It's all complicated, but maybe she's gonna kind of start to sit back and recognize this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that she just hasn't been doing to follow up with what all of her killings. Like, she
Yeah,
has not still changed her locks, even though people have keys to the house and can come over at any time, and they do.
yeah.
And she also finally had a moment where she thought about tossing the knife. Like, it was made very clear to her that the other two murders were done with the same weapon, and she knows that she has this knife.
Yeah.
She's holding this knife up, about to kill Marcus. Jeff's rolling by on his bike, being like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What's happening here? Like, oh my goodness, it's you. She really should have thrown that knife away a long while ago, and she should have had the self-awareness to do that. But, she just isn't able to part with it.
Well, as we talk about the demises that happen within this episode, I mean, what happened to Jeff was both incredibly dark, but there was also a part of it I actually ironically kind of appreciated, because it's nice to see somebody at this newspaper office is not a complete idiot. Now, could Jeff be disrespectful? Yes. Can Jeff be a heel? Absolutely. But can he also be decent at his job? It feels like that answer is yes. It's nice to see that he had, even before he has this big revelation in the escape from on the bicycle, which was somehow even worse than River Cartwright's escape from the bicycle and Slow Horses. But even before this, he already knew that something was up with her, and he was already digging into it. And I like that it wasn't just some immediate, oh, you're the bad person, when it was already kind of sort of on his mind already.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned in the last review, which happened in this episode, was that the walls were going to start closing in on her from multiple different directions.
Mhm.
And having Jeff be one of those people and show that, yeah, he is a heel, but he's good at his job, where he was starting to dig in and talk to Marcus and find out about the coffee on the chair, and that she stole some stuff from him, and that there were some weird things that were happening, that Jeff was able to start connecting some dots, not all the dots like Marina, but some dots, that something wasn't right, that either it was, is she involved in some kind of way, or is she just really bad at her job because she is a junior, and like what is going on? The pouring of the coffee on the chair seemed personal. Stealing seems personal. Like, what is the connection there? And Jeff he happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time, where he was like watching her hold this knife like she was about to kill Marcus. And it all just like just clicked up to him together, where he realized that she is it. And if he could have gotten away, it would have been the end. But, she got unfortunately lucky, we'll call it, where he got taken out by a truck.
Yeah, I'm willing to accept for now that AJ isn't figuring this out, because AJ, you blind. You wearing some rose-colored glasses my dude. You're not seeing
He's
things
got love
clearly.
goggles
But,
on.
Jeff just has jerk goggles on a lot of the time, and Jerky Jeff was able to figure some stuff out. And I will say, while he was riding away on that bicycle, I knew something was probably going to kill him. I wasn't sure that it would be a truck, but given this show's dark humor, of course this is going to be the way that this guy goes, because Rhiannon can just run away. Hopefully nobody's gonna see her. She doesn't have any direct evidence. It can all just be an accident.
This was a really complicated feeling for me watching this scene, because when he saw what she was doing, like, we're all supposed to be watching this show and rooting for her. That she's taking up these bad people, even though we know we're along for the ride, and it's very dark what she's doing, and a lot of it's unhinged. While some of it feels justified, some of it is made up. It reminds me of this French movie called Man Bites Dog. It's a very old movie, where you had this killer who was being followed around by this documentary crew, who were like, oh, and how do you start your day? Oh, I start my day by killing an old lady, and then I'll rob whoever, and ha ha ha. And it's all fun and games until it's getting really dark. And then the documentary crew is getting involved with it, because everybody's starting to just be I don't know, just encapsulated in all of it. And I think us as viewers were also supposed to be falling into the madness with her. That while we understand that some of it is
Mhm.
connected in a reality of things that were done to her, some of it is made up in her head. Like that Julia killed her dog when Julia wasn't there at
Yeah.
all. That's a connection that doesn't make sense. It's not real and it didn't happen. But us as the viewers are also supposed to be becoming unhinged
Yeah.
to be with her on this journey, and it's the only way that works. But in that moment where Jeff rolled up and saw her, I was so torn. I was like, is she going to catch up to him? I'm really rooting for her too. Also, I'm rooting for Jeff to get away.
It's funny because we've been made to not like Jeff because Jeff has been a jerk. So we have been sort of led in this direction. But while Jeff may have been a jerk and may have been demeaning at times to Rhiannon, does that mean that he deserves to die? No, and that's where it all gets really, really complicated. And I think it's complicated in Rhiannon's head as all of this is going on too, because she doesn't want to be found out, obviously. Like that's a big part of her motivation. She doesn't like Jeff for many understandable reasons. She probably would like to take Jeff out, but it's very different having it actually happen in front of you because unlike her other victims, this is somebody she knows. Like this is somebody she's actually been around that people will connect directly to her.
Okay, let's talk about Julia. I'm going to put my beef hat on
All
here
right, all right.
because I'm having the hardest time buying into her character, who has been the person that has been putting her down for all this time. And now Rhiannon is in this spot where she has Julia. She has her kill list. Julia's on it. She has not killed Julia. One of the big reasons I had thought she hadn't killed Julia was because she was waiting for an apology and an acceptance of what she did, which she got, which didn't feel genuine, but it
Mhm.
seemed like Rhiannon took it as genuine because Julia has been inconsistent as she's been talking to her. One minute she's lashing out at her, the next minute she's confiding in her, the next minute she's apologizing to her, the next minute they're having girls' night makeup night. I didn't believe it at all that this was a thing where she came in and Julia was like, I can help you with your makeup. This color isn't for you. Let me do your makeup. And I know there was that moment where Julia was like, maybe I could just jam this in her eye, but it just didn't make sense to me. It wasn't believable at all, especially since there was also a couple of times that Julia could have just gotten away. Like when AJ was at the door and Rhiannon was like, hey, okay, don't say anything or I'll kill the person that's at the door. She's like loosely tied to the table with some rope. Her hands are out, her legs are out. There's a knife on the table. She could have just left at the back door. Like, I don't know why she didn't. It's so frustrating to me. I just don't understand what it is. Like if the storyline is that Julia is really looking at what she did to this person and that this is where Rhiannon is and it's because of Julia, if she's really feeling this, I'm not seeing it as the reason why Julia would stay and be like, I need to fix what I did to this woman.
They could have fixed it in probably just a line or two. It wouldn't have had to have been super hard. They could have just said, Julia is struggling to know what to do, how to handle it. She's going back and forth because she's feeling inconsistent in some way. And there's a missing link here because let's think about what's actually going on in Julia's head as all of this plays out. Like you said, she's probably going in her head of, okay, what can I do to fix this? Can I fix this person that I have clearly wronged or hurt? But at the same time, she's probably battling that out with, okay, this person is clearly unhinged. Like, did I do some bad stuff? Sure, but that doesn't justify this. But then she's also going through this, okay, Marcus is terrible. He's horrible. He hurts me. I don't want to go back to that. I need to find some sort of way out. But then she's also wrestling with that along with this other idea of, okay, does Marcus deserve to die? Does Marcus deserve to have the worst thing possible happen to him? How can I get away from both of them? Is there a way that I can get away from both of them? Like if she had just said, I don't know what to do, or been sort of more confused in her body language, like the way that she's carrying it, like that would have made a little bit more sense to me because she's in an impossible situation, but they didn't really play that out enough. It was a little too much just jumping kind of back and forth.
Yeah, she was jumping in and out of different spots
Yeah.
emotionally, but there was no thread that was really putting them together in a way that I felt was believable. And I don't know if it's because it's of the writing or the way that the actress is being directed to do it or what was going on, but it just felt very like jagged
Yeah.
where it was jumping around. I understand she's in a frantic position, but there's a part of her that has said over and over again, this person's not going to kill me. And she said to her face, you're not going to kill me.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what I say or what I do. You know, you've got Rhiannon bathing her and feeding her and, you know, offering to help her with Marcus and do whatever for her. Like the situation is just really weird. None of this is really making any sense to me. But now we're in this position where they've come up with this plan
Yeah.
where they're going to try to like pin everything on Marcus and get him to this house. And he gets there and finds Julia, and Julia, you know, goes through with her part of the plan of what had happened. Marcus is reacting, and we end up with Rhiannon pushing Marcus over the side. Marcus is dead. Julia is part of this now. So going forward, are we just going to be seeing these two women that don't want to be connected? Because there was also this line at one point where it's like, oh, maybe in another life we could have been friends.
Julia's going to be a really conflicted, interesting situation moving forward, because right before Rhiannon pushes Marcus over the side, it seems like she's really trying to find a way to back out of the situation at that point. You know, she recognizes that Marcus is obviously horrible, but I think she's also struggling with this idea of, I'm not Rhiannon. I'm not somebody who seems to be numb to the idea of killing people. Like, this is still a person. It's still really, really difficult to take out a person. So I think on the other side of it, we're going to be moving into this interesting cat and mouse game where obviously Julia knows the truth, but she's also going to recognize that in explaining the truth, she's probably going to set herself up to be arrested or to have some sort of consequences her way. Even though she didn't push Marcus over the side herself, she's still implicated in a way that's going to be very, very difficult for her. And that's why I would not be surprised if in the finale we see Julia sort of sacrifice herself in a way and be like, you know, what Marcus did was terrible, but me holding on to all of this, like, that's terrible in its own way. I can't do it. I need to find a way to turn Rhiannon in.
Yeah, this is sort of going to be a really complicated moment for Julia, because now that the police are there, she's got two different options, because easily Rhiannon can just be like, well, Julia did it. Like, this was happening. Marcus was doing this to her, and I watched her push him. So, you know, she said, who are you going to believe, Julia or me, kind of thing? Like, the innocent me or popular Julia, you know, who was in this situation with this man. I saw it with my own eyes. Yeah. Could she spin it that way? Sure. And it could end up with Julia going to jail. Or Julia could really just say to the police, this is the moment. You haven't done anything yet that could get you put in jail. You can tell the truth and get out of this, maybe. But because it is like a she said, there's no proof of anything yet. It really is just one person's word against another. And with what happened to Julia with Marcus, and even in high school, I mean, Julia said, yeah, my life was really bad. And so I was making your life bad to make myself feel better. It sounds like Julia's life hasn't been great throughout. Yeah. So she might just be like, you know what? I'm now tied to this person. You know, I didn't want Marcus dead, but now I'm in a position that I can move forward. So maybe I'll just hide the secret and it'll be all right. And we'll all just move on.
It's just this classic example of hurt people. And that's what Julia has kind of dealt with for the entirety of her life. And she's facing a really big decision here. But I think the one potential ace in the hole that Julia has is Marina at this point, because Marina is beyond locked in on Rhiannon being the person now. Like, she's found the evidence. She's put things together. The only thing holding her back is Officer Toolbox and basically Sergeant Toolbox and the entire tool set that is this police department, by the way, who are really terrible at just trust your officer. Like, she clearly has a lot of evidence here. Yes, none of it is proof, but it's evidence. Just let her do her job for maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's so frustrating to watch Marina going through this, but I mean, this is the same thing that
Yeah.
Rhiannon has gone through as well at her job and in life. That's why the thing that makes this show really interesting is that we do have this killer
Yeah.
who is connected to this police officer, that the two of them have gone through the exact same thing, and they are continuing to go through the
Yeah.
same thing at their jobs, in their lives, where now Rhiannon is getting away with things, but Marina is not able to do her job as a detective to continue to dive into this and get the okay to really dive into Rhiannon, what she's doing, even though she has threaded together so
Yeah.
much. You know how I said earlier I'm conflicted on who I should have been rooting for with Jeff or Rhiannon? I am 100% rooting for Marina, and I know that I'm probably not supposed to be, but I am. She's so smart, and the characters put together so well, and I just can't help myself. Rhiannon, you go into jail. Marina, let's go, MVP.
Okay, here's where I am entering the finale here. I am rooting for Marina, but I'm also
No.
rooting for Rhiannon to get away. Okay, here's what I want to see happen. I want to see Marina finally convince all these other dum-dums that she's right, that she's been right. They should have been listening to her. Maybe she gets a promotion or something out of this, and it's not going to be her fault that Rhiannon escapes, but Rhiannon still manages to escape because let's
Yes.
face it, it's incredibly unrealistic that, yeah, she would find a way to get away with all of this, but at the same time, we watched 8 seasons of Dexter, plus
I know.
Dexter New Blood, plus Dexter : Resurrection that's going to start filming.
Let's go.
I know. And you know what? We don't care because it's very entertaining. And that's the thing, is that we don't want Dexter Morgan to have the greatest things in life, but it's compelling television. And Rhiannon Lewis is compelling television. Yes, she's terrible. Yes, she's a killer. Someday she should end up meeting her demise, and I will be rooting for that. But this is only season 1. I would watch 5 more seasons of this show, and I cannot have her go to jail right now.
No, I think that Julia's going to back her up, and she will back up Julia, and they will end up both being okay, and they will get out of this, at least for this season. But I really, like I said, I love the idea that we have this detective and we have this killer that
Yep.
are both very similar and can read each other so well. But because nobody listens to either of them, they both just can't be heard, and
Yeah.
they can't get anywhere with each other.
That's why we're set up for a really, really wild, entertaining finale. And even though episode 5 had its fair share of problems and believability and, questions, and I still hate Craig and I want Craig to be gone from the show as soon as humanly possible, I am still really compelled by where they're going to go with this, because it feels like any sort of scenario could play out in this finale. And as long as they write it well, I would believe it. And that's not something that you really get with a lot of other shows out there.
Yeah.
But, this is where we are, though. Coming off Sweetpea Season 1, Episode 5. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any of our other coverage that is happening right now in between From on MGM Plus and Silo coming very soon to Apple TV Plus. You can support us further by joining our Patreon. We've got a link in the description for that. Exclusive videos of the Penguin happening there. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you here next time.